So there's two girls. So we have Agatha Krishna Creel and Georgie Iyer Creel, and they're both a play on colonial British women writers, Agatha Christie and Georgette Heyer, who are very popular. Were very popular in Britain and still very popular in India today. Agatha Christie still has pretty much every bookstore you go to in India has a section that's just Agatha Christie. Um, and these two girls are 13 and 12, and they or 14 and 12 actually. Now I'm forgetting their own ages, but they live in a fictional town in Wyoming called Marley, and they again it follows a year in their life, and their uncle and aunt and cousin have come to live with them in their house from India. And these girls have grown up in Wyoming their whole life. They're very American, but this Indian family comes and moves in with them, and their uncle begins to abuse them. And so they, over the course of they move in 1984, so they've kind of endured it for a while, and they just decide that they're done with it. And instead of telling a grown up or doing anything, they decide to to kill him. And it's funny because I love Law and Order, and in fact, 3 days ago I have a sweatshirt that says executive producer Dick Wolf, which I wear around, and everyone thinks is really funny. But I love Law and Order, and I partly love it because most episodes justice is served and people get their comeuppance. But I think when a lot of this stuff happens within families or, you know, with children, sometimes that doesn't happen. And so I feel like in a way, I wanted these girls to, yeah, exact revenge. And, they do it through poisoning him. And um I just took a lot of glee in like the fact that they sort of took back like their girlhood and took back their um I don't know, just took back some agency against him because he was, you know, kind of a pathetic figure in the book. There is a lot of pop culture, but yeah, it's set in 1986. It covers a year, so every chapter is basically a year in a month in these girls' lives. It starts in January, ends in December, um, with a little flash forward to their adulthood. But I wanted to just take I looked at 1986 as like a really pivotal year for me as a kid. It was like, the Challenger explosion. I never know if it's Haley's or Halley's comet. That comet, the comet happened. That was a big deal. There were all these weird things like Hands Across America and just strange things from 1986. Chernobyl happened. It was a weird year. And I thought, I like this year. I want to do this year. Um, and I wanted to just cover a year in these two teenage girls' lives, in which they decide to commit a murder. And it's not a whodunit per se. We know in the beginning, we know they did it. And it's just a matter of why they did it and what unpacking this sort of the family dynamics, um, what was happening within the year, why they do this thing and what it means to do it. So it became really fun for me, I think, as a writer, because I did spend a lot of, I mean, probably I was wasting time, but I did spend a lot of time like watching old commercials. At one point, I ordered a toy that I remembered from Etsy. And like, it's just like, it was a really fun, nostalgic deep dive for me. And I had so much time between my books, like, because, it's 12 years between my books and almost 13, 12 and a half. And I feel like in that time, it's not that my agent was great and she was still like, checking in every once in a while, but I felt like the pressure to deliver a book became less every year because everyone was kind of like, oh, she's probably just wrote that one story collection. So in a way that really freed me up to then also write the book in a really weird way and to be able to put things like quizzes, which were a huge part of my teenage self. Was I did all those quizzes in 17 and YM and um, teen magazines, and I lived and died by what those magazines told me to do. And so I I felt more freedom as time had gone on to just write the book I wanted to write and tell the story of these two sisters kind of the way I wanted to. And that was also very freeing. I mean, part of the reason I think I wrote this book is I taught lit for many, many, many years before I taught creative writing, as most creative writers do. And I taught postcolonial literature for lots of years. So over the years, just to mix up the syllabus, I read a lot of different, writers colonial writers from, you know, Heart of Darkness to just all sorts of books, and from all over the world, from the Caribbean, from Africa, from South America, from just all the places the British had a foothold. And so I mean all of that was sort of looming in the back of my mind always. I think I had read a lot of post-colonial theory, and I thought a lot about um, my own family. I mean, it's interesting because I'm half Irish as well. I actually hold an Irish passport, which is hilarious because I don't look Irish. But, um, I almost joke when people are like, your parents are so different. I'm like, well, both of them hate the British. So it sort of works out okay. Like my Irish family, I think my Irish family hates the British more than my Indian family. Like, I mean, I think my Indian family, there are also aspects of colonialism. My mom went to an Anglo-Indian school, like that were very appealing to them. And I think and I wanted to put that a little bit in the book with the mother. Like she's complicated. Like she likes watching things like the royal wedding. She likes drinking tea and certain holdovers that just kind of are hangovers of the British being there, and had a British education, and what do you do with that? And I think that um so all of that was like very deep in my mind when I was writing the book. I definitely thought about all these things a lot and how complicated colonialism is. I mean, of course, it's very easy for me to be like, well, it's all terrible. But I also I do sit with my older relatives in India who were like, well, I liked this aspect. And I'm like, oh gosh, okay, So it's complicated, and so I wanted that to be in the book a little bit about the sort of legacy of how complicated. And the 80s is not I mean, that was India had only been India, that version of India, since 1947. So it's not even when this book's happening, it's not that many years after. So it's kind of wild actually to think that my mom, when she was born was under British rule. I read a lot of mysteries and I love reading mysteries and thrillers. And I read a lot of, I mean, I sort of read a lot of contemporary ones that probably people would say are kind of not the most high literature, but I love them. And I'm always amazed at their plotting. I mean, mystery writers are amazing at plotting in a way that I think a lot of us literary writers could learn a good, strong lesson from, because we tend to ramble and can leave threads and be like, whatever, because it's literary. So, I mean, I definitely Agatha Christie was very large in my mind at the time, and I love P.D. James, and I like a lot of. I mean, I like a lot of old traditional British mystery writers. So, but again, I knew I wasn't writing a very traditional whodunit at all. So I was like, we know who did it, but I definitely thought about that in the back of my mind.